Welcome to the Great Basin Smoke Dispersion Briefing for Monday, April 10th. This is Gina McGuire. Over the last 24 hours, we've only seen a few light showers over northern areas of the Great Basin, with dry conditions elsewhere. However, over the last week, the image on the left shows precipitation mainly focused over western and northern half of the Great Basin, and this precipitation has been above normal, especially for what we saw in the Sierra into far western Nevada. Over the last 30 days, we've seen the precipitation again concentrated over the northern half to two-thirds of the Great Basin and has been near to above normal. Over areas further south in southern Nevada, the Arizona Strip, and southern eastern Utah, precipitation has been well below normal. The satellite loop from this morning shows an area of low pressure off the Pacific Northwest coast, with a wave of low pressure moving also through Idaho, which will bring some shower activity across parts of Idaho into northwest Wyoming today. The rest of the Great Basin will remain dry with temperatures near normal. Now looking at the ventilation index for today, ventilation indices will remain fairly high across most of the Great Basin, with the exception of the Sierra into southern and far eastern areas. This is largely due to high mixing heights across the region, as winds will remain relatively light in most areas. We will see some gusty winds up across Idaho into northwest Wyoming today, with gusts between 20 and 30 miles per hour. As we move into Tuesday, and this first feature moves off to the east, we will have another area of low pressure moving into the Great Basin, bringing mainly clouds and some light shower activity to northern areas. Ventilation indices will again remain quite high, however winds will be increasing with this system, and that will be really the attribute for the higher ventilation indices. The exception will be the Sierra into parts of Idaho, Wyoming, and northern Utah on Tuesday, where dispersion will remain somewhat poor. Looking at the individual components, you can see this increase in wind as that area of low pressure approaches across most of Nevada into southwest Utah and the Arizona Strip. Areas further north and east will see lighter wind flow. Mixing heights will remain quite high over southern areas of the Great Basin and over portions of southern Idaho. As we move into Wednesday, we still continue to see this presence of low pressure off the west coast. The feature on Tuesday moves through, but we will see another upper-level disturbance approaching, and this will also see an increase in clouds once again, along with increase in showers over parts of northern California into northern Nevada up into Idaho. Ventilation indices will again remain quite high, and this is largely attributed to the stronger winds, where we will see gusts between 35 and 45 miles per hour, especially across most of Nevada into western Utah. Mixing heights again will remain relatively high in all areas, with the exception of the central Idaho mountains into western Wyoming. If we look at the Utah Forecast Clearing Index for the next few days, you can see clearing indices are generally moderate to high over the northern half of Utah today and relatively low over far southern areas and the higher elevations of eastern Utah. However, as we go through Tuesday and Wednesday, and those systems continue to approach with increasing winds and high mixing heights, we will continue to see that clearing index increase as we go through the middle of the week. If we look at the 3-day forecast amount of precipitation, and this takes us through early Thursday morning, you can see most of the focus is in the Pacific Northwest and northern California. However, far northern and western sides of the Great Basin will see some precipitation, with the heaviest in the higher elevations of the Sierra and the central Idaho mountains. As we go into later this week and through the weekend, the weather pattern will continue to remain unsettled, especially over northern and western areas of the Great Basin. On Thursday, another trough of low pressure moves through, spreading precipitation across the northern half of the Great Basin, and finally into northern Utah, parts of eastern Idaho, and western Wyoming. Dispersion will remain quite good across the area as the system continues to push stronger winds further east, and mixing heights will remain relatively high, especially over eastern and southern areas. As we move into Friday, this trough moves to the east. However, we still continue to see the presence of the trough off the west coast, which will influence Idaho into Wyoming as we go through Friday with continued showers. Dispersion will start to decrease as we move into Friday over western and southern areas of the Great Basin, but still remain quite good further north. As we go into Saturday, still some lingering showers or cloud cover over northern areas with drier conditions as you move further south. Dispersion will remain quite good over southern and central areas, but still remain somewhat lower as that system moves east and winds decrease over Wyoming, northern Utah, and parts of the Sierra. By Sunday, we still see this trough off the west coast, and it will push some precipitation, especially into the Sierra and possibly far western Nevada, with much lighter shower activity further east. Ventilation indices will still remain quite high with the exception of the far north. If we look at overall forecast amounts of precipitation from Thursday morning through Saturday morning, and again you can see the focus is over northern and western areas. However, precipitation amounts will remain relatively light across most of the Great Basin, with the exception of the high elevations. Looking a little bit further out as we go into the middle to late portion of April, we'll continue to see chances of below normal temperatures and above normal precipitation over northern and western areas of the Great Basin, and above normal temperatures further east, but still this wet presence over much of the west. That concludes our briefing for today. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Thank you for listening.